Welcome back to the American Dream Podcast Season 3. Now it's time to hear what Americans think of their dream. I'm your host, Ekaterina. Привет! Welcome back. You're listening to the American Dream Podcast. I'm in the studio with Terrell Dawson. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So this season is focused on contrast and opinions between different American people on the concept of the American dream. I'm interviewing people with different lifestyles, income, religious and political beliefs, as well as race and sexuality. I thought it would be interesting to hear how minorities in the U.S. value and think about the American dream. So let's dive in.
Let's do it.
You are considered a minority. Describe what that means to you.
Yeah. When I think about this, it kind of just reminds me when I first came to Springfield, right? With me being African American coming to Springfield, like the ratio is probably like 1-4, you know? And for me, I don't think it had as big of an impact on me as like a lot of my peers, because my grandpa always lived like in small towns where he was like the only black man there. And I saw his grandpa like, how does this make you feel? Right. And then he always used to tell me, he's like, hey, I love it. Like, I'm the center of attention. I'm like, dude, you are crazy. Right. So just seeing like just how he navigated and how comfortable he was with that, I think it helped me a lot in the long run. But coming here was just so different than because I'm from Kansas City, like the inner city. So from there, it was like, hey, I'm the majority. Like everybody around me looks the same as me. But coming here and it's like, man, hey, when I was in Missouri State, I may be the only black person in that classroom, you know? So at times it's kind of like, hey, I know all eyes on me, but since I had that perspective of my grandpa, like it really didn't affect me as much.
Mm-hmm. So you are originally from Kansas City?
Yep. Kansas City, Missouri.
Okay.
The Missouri side, you know, there's a difference.
Right.
Yep.
Yes. So what is the biggest challenge you have observed as a minority in your everyday life?
Yeah. I would just say is the stereotype. Mm-hmm. The huge stereotype, especially for me, because like, you know, I have dreadlocks, so it's like, especially like if I walk in somewhere, like you can just notice like right that first glance, like what is he gonna do? So, you know, mm-hmm. But then it's like, it's one of those things once you get to know me, or like you're like, oh hey, like this guy is loving, like he loves Jesus, like, you know, he's very charismatic. So but and if I'm even thinking back home, it's just stories just like with my family, if whether we're talking about like systematic racism, like problems, issues like with law enforcement, mm-hmm. you know, so like those things still happen. But for me, it's just that I kind of have that perspective of like, hey, like people are going to be people at the end of the day, and I can't control how they act, but I can control how I respond. So like that's always like my thought process whenever I encounter something like that.
Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know if I'm going to live this in or not, but ever since that world situation with the Ukraine started to happen, people mm-hmm. have had, you know, said and looked certain way towards my direction too. When they ask me because of my accent, where you from? And I say I'm from Russia. Mm-hmm. And then they automatically give me that look like, you know,
right,
I
like
murdered
you're
someone.
Exactly, like you're the one calling the shots over there.
Exactly.
No, and like I do hope you like this, but like that is so real, because you see how easily people can just stereotype mm-hmm. you because of what somebody else has done. You know, so it's like. And I think the crazy thing from my shoes is that, hey, if you pull up social media and then you see a black man with dreads rob a store, they're going to think every black man with dreads rob a store. And I'm sure it's like the same thing for you. It's like, hey, what was going on in Russia? Well, all Russians are the same. It's like, come on.
Exactly. So what is the main thing minority groups needs, in your opinion?
I would say the main thing that we need is... I mean, so you can say support, but my biggest thing is just like, okay, if I'm speaking for myself, like, hey, I just want you to make me feel known and to feel valued. You know, like don't just treat me like I'm just an outcast or something like that. Like, hey, if you really love and care for me, like, show that in your everyday actions. Like, seek me out in a sense, learn more like about my history and truly and who I am, and just don't treat me different just because I may look different than you. Mm-hmm. So I feel like if we all just have that perspective, like, hey, I'm gonna love this person like no matter what, then I feel like a lot of things could be very different. Because you know me, like with me being a youth pastor, like I try to have the same perspective as like, you know, as Jesus would. Yeah. So I just want to have that like same perspective. So it's like, man, hey, no matter what you look like, where you may come from, I'm gonna love you with the same love that Jesus loved me with. So
speaking of history, what does Black History Month means to you? Do you celebrate it? And if so, how?
Oh, 100%. Man, Black History Month, I feel like for me, I don't just take this month to just to celebrate Black history. You know, it's like I live my everyday life just to like, I live my everyday life, and not in a sense of like honor or to please, but, you know, just to I have the perspective of like, hey, these people, activists like Martin Luther King, all these Rosa Parks, like they sacrifice so much so we can have the freedom that we have today. And I feel like it would be doing them like a disservice if I don't go as hard as I can. You know, like if I don't appreciate where we are now. So like during that month, it's no different than the whole year. You know, it's like, hey, I'm going to love people well. I'm going to elevate like Black people. I'm going to support Black businesses. And if the question like you want to ask is like, man, how can other people support it? It's like, hey, man, find a Black business to support. Find a Black person to like just go learn more about, to like dive, like actually like look at life from their perspective and figure out how you can support them, you know?
Absolutely. So I know that a lot of people support Black people here locally. And in general in America, or at least I've seen those posts on social media that people like to make. Yet there are so much hatred towards Black people. Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Man, that is a really good question. Why is there so much hatred towards Black people? Honestly, I don't know if I have an answer for you, like on why there's so much hatred. I mean, because if you just think like more about the history behind it, it's like black people should be the ones. If anybody has hatred, they should have hatred in their hearts. Mm-hmm. But instead, it's flipped, mm-hmm. which has always been very odd to me. Honestly, I don't have an answer for you.
Have you experienced any negative attitudes or discrimination because of your race?
Oh, yes. And I'll even tell you a recent story. So one of my students come up to me. He's like, hey, listen, I really like this girl, right? And it's like, hey, we're dating. And she just told her dad about me. So my student's Black. The girl he's dating is white, mm-hmm. right? So he's like, hey, we're dating. She told her dad about us. And the dad says this. He's like, no, we don't allow that. So you either move out or you break up with him. Right? Exactly. But the daughter and the son, the daughter and the guy, they're together, mm-hmm, you know? Mm-hmm. So now it's tough because it's like, hey, are you, as a Black man, are you going to make her choose between you and her father? Mm-hmm. You know, so it's just things like that, things that you normally wouldn't even think is a problem, but is. So I think that right there is just like a prime example mm-hmm. of that. Yes, there is still racism in America today. Mm-hmm.
What about you personally?
Yeah.
Have you experienced anything like that?
Yeah. So in the same situation, man, it was a year and a half. I remember it like it was yesterday. And it's funny because it's like a very similar situation. My mom warned me about it. So like I told you, where I'm from, hey, majority Black, right? So I was dating this girl. My mom was like, okay, hey, like, do you know the risk? Because there's a white girl. She was like, you know the risk that you're taking, like dating her. She was like, hey, you should probably meet her dad beforehand. Mm-hmm. Like, does her dad know that you are Black? And I was like, yeah, of course, I think so. I don't know. So I went to go ask the girl, right? I'm like, hey, does your dad know? And she's like, I haven't had that conversation with him. I'm like, okay, so when? Right, exactly. Mm. So I'm like, okay, hey, so when are you gonna have that conversation? And so she goes to have the conversation. Very similar response. No support. Never met the dad a day in my life. And then she just started like just acting different. And I was like, okay, It clicked. And then I just wanted to talk to my mom about it. And she was like, dude, I told you. And I'm like, well, why is this like this? Mm-hmm. And I just, remember just processing that with her, and she was like, man, you would never truly know why people are the way they are, but the one thing you control is how you react and respond to it. So that's just a perspective I have on everything. So.
I have somewhat of a similar story to add to this. When I was dating this guy, maybe like a year or two ago, I got to meet his mom, and the issue with me was the fact that I'm not a citizen of the United States, and she thought that I'm dating her son to get a green card.
Oh my.
And that is never the truth, because I already have my green card, and at that moment I had that green card also, so I had to explain all of this. So there is still this, stereotype that if a person dates a foreign person, they're getting used. So it's kind of like a similar parallel to your story with this.
Yeah.
So I can definitely feel how you felt. It's just, it's very disrespectful, and it hurts a lot when you can't be with someone that you truly liked. And it's super disappointing to hear that the person that you thought liked you back didn't.
Right. And it's so crazy to me. Like, I can't grasp it.
Absolutely. So finish this sentence for me. Okay. It's important to encourage diversity around the world because...
It's important to encourage diversity around the world because we all come from different cultures and different backgrounds, but I think it's important for us to understand one another, because a part of loving one another is understanding one another and literally putting yourself in their shoes and looking at life from their perspective. Because it's like, hey, me and you can like we've been talking about the same topic but have two completely different views, and it's not that I'm right or you're wrong. We just have two different views because we've had two different upbringings. But it's like, hey, if I can just step out of my shoes and look at it from your perspective, maybe I'll see something different and understand exactly where you're coming from, instead of just saying like, hey, no, you're wrong and I'm right. So that's why it's very important. Actually,
that aligns perfectly into my next question. What can you learn from someone of another race?
The first thing that comes to my mind is just, first of all, a lot. Like, you can learn what's truly, and because you can learn what's truly important to a person and just their culture. Cause so I'm a guy, I love to travel, right? Haven't traveled outside the US a lot yet, but I plan to, just because I'm just so fascinated with different cultures, just understanding it's like, man, this is your way of life. This is how you go about things. And yes, it's different than mine, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. Like, hey, I just want to take a dive into your world.
Okay. This entire podcast in general is focused on the American dream. But before we dive into this, I want to know if you know anything about your origin family. So your first generation family. And if you know, what generation of immigrants are you?
Oh, this is a good question. And I love that you asked this, and I do not know that. But what you asked me, that it makes me want to challenge myself to go and find out, because so much of our history has been just washed from us, and it's like what you learn in schools is that like, hey, yeah, African Americans, they came from Africa on a slave ship all the way over here, but then it's like, hey, well,
it can be something else too.
It can be, yeah, right. And it's like, hey, okay, what part of Africa? Were we all stolen from there? Were we traded? Because you hear so many different things, but it's like, okay, hey, what is the truth? Which you asking me that is definitely going to challenge me to take a deeper dive into that.
So you don't know anything about your family tree?
No. Well, only thing I know about my grandfather, who's still living, is that he was raised on a plantation in Mississippi. Right. So, what perspective I put to my mind is that a lot of that wasn't too long ago. So he's raised on plantation in Mississippi. He escaped and came to Kansas City, and this is where he started our family here.
Okay, so what are your thoughts? Let's just jump into the concept of the American dream now, since you don't really know anything about your family tree.
So embarrassing.
It's okay. Actually, most people that I have interviewed so far, most Americans don't know, which kind of upsets me, because everyone here in the States used to be an immigrant in some generation.
Correct.
So, first of all, what do you think about the American dream?
Can I just be honest?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, I think the American dream is like baloney. So for me, growing up, the American dream, it's like, okay, hey, you're going to go to school, you're going to get a high paying job, you're going to make a lot of money, and then you're going to retire. Right. And then like happy life after. But then it's like, okay, hey, let's really break that down. Okay. So you're going to go to school. So if you don't go on a sports ride, you accumulate a lot of debt, and then you're going to work for what? 30 to 40 years. What retirement is at 65 to 70. Average lifespan is around 80. So then you're going to enjoy retirement for 10 years. No.
Oh, wow. That sounds very depressing.
Am I right? Or am I right?
Yeah, you are. But I just never thought of it like that.
Yes. So like for me, but that's how my mind works. Like I break everything down. It's like, okay, hey, I'm here and I'm looking to exactly where I want to go, and I'm breaking down the steps, and I'm like, dude, that's not no dream that I want to live. For me, like my American dream is, okay, if I do decide to go to school, after school, how can I create financial freedom to myself to where it's that wherever I'm working, one, it doesn't feel like work, and two, I can retire whenever I want to. Like I don't have to wait till a set time to retire because I'm waiting on my 401k to hit a certain amount.
Yeah.
Like that's not an American dream to me, because then people who have retired and maybe make what? $1,200 to $2,000 a month. That's hard to live off of. So,
So you have more of a long-term American dream.
Yeah. Well, this is my American dream. Is I'm fascinated with business. Like I love business. I love the e-commerce side, franchise, whatever I just love business. So for me, I would love to set myself up early to where it's like I can retire at any point. I can to where if I wanted to stop working in 5 years, not work at all, that I will be set up for the future.
I have interviewed so many people for this podcast, and no one in the past 3 seasons has ever told me that American dream is, what did you call it? Baloney?
Baloney.
Or like nobody was very, I don't want to say like harshly realistic with it, but just like nobody has ever told me this is their realistic part of it.
Yeah.
Everyone just, puts it in perspective of rainbow and sunshine.
No. And then, because I also have another perspective on it as well, is that we can chase the American dream, whatever that looks like, because it looks different for everybody else. Like I can chase this financial freedom. I can chase a lot of money in the world. But one thing I have to understand is that no matter the amount of money I accumulate, it would never truly satisfy. Right. So what I want to come to grips with is like, hey, the most important thing to me is have a stable relationship with God. Like I want to have a strong relationship with God, because that's the only thing that's going to satisfy. And then everything else that comes with it, but like the money and a wonderful family in the future, being able to take care of my family, like that's all added on. Because no matter, like I always remind myself, like, hey, no matter the amount of money that you accumulate, it would never satisfy you. Because I know a lot of people with plenty of money and they're still not satisfied.
So it's more internal.
Oh, 100%.
I'm so fascinated with your answer. I love it. Finally, I want you to finish this sentence for me. People should be treated equally because...
People should be treated equally because... You want my blunt answer?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I think people should be treated equally because nobody is better than another. Like I told you, like I just have to keep going back to what's most important to me, and that is God. Is that like, man, He looks at us no differently. So it's like, man, why are we looking at each other differently? And is it because like of social class? Like that doesn't make you better than me. If you have more money, like, hey, now you may be more disciplined than me in some areas, more consistent, but that doesn't make you better. So I feel like, man, if we were people who really stemmed off of love, then our country would be way different. Our world would be way different.
Absolutely. Well, Terrell, I have had so much fun talking to you, and I wish this was endless. Thank you so much for visiting me today. We are upon our break. We'll be back right after this. Studio with Paige Lorenzo. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I work with your husband, Houston, here at the station, and he told me that you grew up in a pretty cool family. And I think you'll be the only American here on my podcast that will know what generation of immigrants you are. Yeah. So I want to start by learning some more about your family. So tell me, Where are your family from? Parents?
Yes. Okay. So my parents are both U.S. citizens. So my mom is like totally white. But my dad is half Japanese and half Filipino. So he's second generation.
Oh, so it's just your dad.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then his parents, his mom is from Japan. And then his dad was from the Philippines.
Oh, I should have interviewed your dad then.
I know, right? So I'm like third generation.
Okay, so you're the third generation, but that's still a good answer because most Americans don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, so what was it like for you growing up in half foreign family?
Yeah, well, honestly, I feel like I led a very like American kind of childhood and upbringing. My dad's mom died when he was pretty young, and so I know like some things kind of got passed on to him, but a lot was kind of lost as far as like traditions and like Japanese culture type things. And so I feel like he didn't have a lot to carry on to my family. And so when I think back, like I think I look generally like Asian American, or some, people would maybe guess Mexican, Asian. But my upbringing for the most part, I feel like was very like American based. And I've gotten to learn more about my Asian kind of culture and just about Asia in general as I've been more of an adult, which has been interesting.
And how old was your dad when he moved here? With his parents?
So actually, he was born here.
Oh, he was born here.
Yeah,
okay.
So they're like him and my mom are both like American, like as far as like the upbringing, and he's from Lebanon, Missouri. My mom is from Aurora, Missouri.
Okay.
But both of my dad's parents moved here from their countries.
And do you know when? How old were they?
I don't know how old they were, but I know my dad's dad, who was Filipino, he was actually in World War II. And he actually walked in the Bataan Death March. Oh. And he was a POW twice and escaped both times. So he has like a crazy war stories and things like that. He's passed on since. But I think he moved to the States after the war. I think his American dream is probably settle down, be happy, be away from violence, start a family, and just live life to the fullest after he'd experienced so much hardship in the war. So I think that's really his story.
That is so cool to me still. Okay, so in what ways do your dad or maybe both of your parents kind of shaped your culture and maybe your identity?
Yeah, well, I feel like, honestly, when I think about like what has shaped my identity the most, I'm a triplet. And so I'm an
That is so cool too. Oh my gosh, yes. It's so rare.
Thank you. Yes, it is. It's normal to me because that's just been my life. But it's funny when I tell people and they don't know, just because they're like, "Whoa, I've never met a triplet before." But I feel like that. I think about like my identity, and I think that growing up having my two sisters, like my best friends, built in, we look the exact same. We experienced basically all of our firsts together. I think that honestly has shaped my childhood and my identity more than anything. But again, as I've gotten older and wanted to like look more into what makes me, and my Japanese and Asian sides, and really appreciating those cultures, I think that I'm shaping that more as I go as an adult.
So you mentioned that you are Asian American. So what does that mean to you?
Like I said, I never really like thought about like the Asian side of me, the American side of me. I think I was raised feeling American, but I looked Asian. Like people would look at me and know that I'm, some sort of Asian. And so growing up, I didn't really think much of it. And I think maybe also because I had my two sisters who looked exactly like me. I was like, we're all normal. Like, we're around each other all the time. And so we're a group of people who look like this. But as I got older, my husband, Houston, he loved like Japanese culture and movies and just he was learning Japanese in high school. And so he had traveled to Japan right after he graduated high school. And then when we met in college, he had like told me all about Japan and like how amazing it is. And then he actually took me to Japan twice. And that I think was like kind of the stepping stone of me appreciating, like I'm actually wanting to like, find out more about just something that I considered a part of my DNA. Like I was like, now I actually have been there and I see what this culture is like, and it made me really want to continue to learn more about that side of me and delve deeper into the history of that, because I don't know a lot about it.
Yes.
So I'm slowly
interesting.
more. Yes.
It's interesting to find out. So you still are considered a minority group here in the US. What are some of the problems that Asian Americans face?
You know, I like definitely as of late, there has been like a rise in violence against Asian Americans, which has been super upsetting to see. And so they face racism just like any other minority group, I would say. But I've also noticed, especially like even more recently, more representation in media for Asian American families. So like Parasite and like Everything Everywhere All at Once, such great movies. And so I'm hoping that that is like a turning point, and just getting more of those stories being told. I'm hoping that helps people appreciate and understand more about Asian Americans, and that in a lot of ways they're not that different from us.
Yeah. So what does that even mean to you, being a minority?
You know, I feel like I haven't like had so many hardships that probably first and second generation immigrants have experienced. In my point of view, being a minority, it's something that I'm proud of. It's something that I used to kind of like want to hide. Like for me, it was like my hair is so like growing up, my hair's coarse, it's thick and it's black. And I think I would always look at the other kids in like the girls in my class, or look at magazines and TV shows. And it's like, I just want like silky, soft hair, and I want like lighter skin. And like, that's what's beautiful. And I think that was maybe the biggest like challenge I had to overcome, was my mental thoughts about what I look and not feeling like I'm beautiful because of what makes me different. And now as I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate. And to
it's cool to be different.
Yes. And like, and I think it's changed in society. It's changed in just in like trends and things. Like people are appreciating it more, and being different is actually like such a great thing. And so I think I'm proud of this part of me, even though it took a lot of time and me getting to be an adult to get there. But I think I'm very proud of it.
Okay. So what is the main thing minority groups needs, in your opinion?
I think that minority groups need to be seen and heard more. And actually, like I minored in sign language, American Sign Language, in college. So when I think about minority groups, sometimes my mind jumps to deaf people and like that whole subculture. But I remember like learning the language. It's such a beautiful language. There's so much that goes into it, more than just the signs themselves. So you use a lot of like body language and facial expressions. And I remember just meeting so many deaf individuals and just hearing their stories and seeing how they like portrayed themselves and told their stories. And I always just thought like, this is such an amazing language, and they have so many stories to tell, and they have such a unique perspective, but no one's really telling these stories. And so I feel like
this is why I'm making this episode.
Yes. And so I feel like I always just thought like they need to be seen and heard more. And like we need to bridge a gap to make sure that they can tell their stories. And again, more recently, movies have come out like Coda, and I think Sound of Metal. And even like I've seen like Google commercials and like random commercials that are like showcasing sign language itself. And it makes me so excited. And that makes me happy that I feel like there are more people trying to give more minority groups a voice. And I think that's what they need, is to be seen, to be heard, to have their stories be told, because in a lot of ways, there's a lot of similarities and the same things that minority groups are facing. And then they have such a different perspective as well that they need to tell.
Do you think there's still racism in America?
Absolutely. Yes. And I don't know what it's going to take to overcome that. I see there's so many things that I think that are being worked to help overcome it, but there's absolutely still racism in America.
Which is so surprising to me, because America is like the country of immigrants and the country of, acceptance. This is where everyone comes to feel equal. Yet it's not happening,
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing to me. So have you experienced any negative attitudes or maybe like discrimination behavior towards you personally, or maybe your sisters?
Yeah, I think like when we were growing up, like in elementary school, there would be like, we'd be like on the playground. And I remember like kids being like, you have graham cracker skin, like your skin's a little bit darker. Or they I remember them calling us Oreos, and I can't remember why. I feel like it was because we have black hair. But there would be weird,
interesting,
child, little, mean comments. But I never, I didn't take that much offense to them. I don't know if it's because I had my two sisters and we were all just I don't even know what they're talking about. We all look the same. We're great. But and that might just be because we generally just looked different. But again, as I've gotten older, and maybe I feel kind of lucky to have grown up and become an adult in a time where ethnicities are being appreciated and the differences are being more seen in media and things like that. And so, yeah, I haven't actually had a lot of violence or anything or harm in that way.
Well, I actually have.
No.
Not in a very terrible way, but with everything that started in the world with, Ukraine and stuff.
Yeah.
When I said, it literally just happened a year ago or so, when I just introduced myself to somebody that was sitting next to me, and it was an elderly lady. She was like, "Oh, you have an accent. Where are you from?" And I was like, "Russia." And she did not speak to me the entire evening after that. She just turned her head the opposite direction and did not recognize my existence after that.
That is so upsetting. It's hard when I hear stories like that, because I'm like, how can you just lump every person from a country as the same thoughts and the same beliefs and ideals? That's upsetting, and that I'm so sorry.
I mean,
it's crazy that people still think in that way.
Yes. You just fall under that category immediately. Yeah.
We're in the Midwest also, and so I feel like that
people don't know how to filter.
Yes, and it's more common. So yeah, this is. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. It's okay. So I have a sentence for you to finish.
Okay.
It's important to encourage diversity around the world because
we are only getting more diverse. I feel like we weren't shown a lot of Asian people in movies, or just even getting to learn more about just all kinds of different cultures. And I think that as a whole, in the whole world, everyone is just meshing cultures more and traveling more. And I think that it would be just crazy to stay back in times where we didn't appreciate, other new, unique cultures. And I think it's so much fun to try new foods, getting into Vietnamese and Thai.
Exactly.
And
that's actually
food.
a great parallel. You're trying new foods, but you don't want to get to know other people of different cultures.
You love pad Thai, but you don't want to visit there.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's just important to appreciate it and to just even dipping your toe into trying new foods or watching foreign films. I think that's super important because we are getting more diverse, and it's only going to grow.
Yes, exactly. And you can learn so much from the other race too. So in your perspective, what do you think you can learn from other race? What would you say?
What can you not learn?
Exactly.
There's so much. And like I said, just delving out into trying new foods and trying new and maybe even starting to learn a language and things. You start learning a lot more about all of the ways, like I said, that are similar against cultures. We all face general, love, and we face hate, we face jealousy. Everyone feels these things. And so to find out that everyone from other countries and cultures are not that different from us, that's important. But then to also see all the ways that they are different. And that's what makes them beautiful and what makes them so unique. And so it's important to see both sides. And I think that is ultimately what can make us and help us understand the greater love of humanity.
So you mentioned a little bit about your family tree. So how well do you know your dad's family tree that expands into different countries?
That's what's so interesting. I don't know a lot about it. And like I said, my dad's mom passed when he was younger. And then my grandpa was Filipino. And he was alive until I was about 15, but he had a really heavy accent, and so I didn't really have a strong relationship with him. But Houston, my husband, just did a 23andMe, and I was like, this is actually pretty fascinating, and I want to actually get more involved in learning about my family tree. I know my dad has always mentioned there's an aunt, his mom's sister was a famous soap opera star in Japan. And he doesn't even know her name. And so I'm like, I need to like delve deeper. And I've been to Japan twice, as I said. So there's a part of me that's like, one of these times I need to go, like, make it a trip to like trace back my family tree and maybe meet some ancestors if I have any.
Yes,
that are, like,
absolutely.
alive. Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't. It's unfortunate because I didn't get to learn a lot about my history and my dad's history, but it's definitely something that now as technology is progressing, I'm like, I actually could do this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, online there are so many sources that you can use to find your family tree.
Yeah.
That is awesome. So do you know what part of the Japan?
I don't.
No. What about Philippines?
I don't. No,
No. No, you don't have to apologize. I was just curious. And you mentioned a little bit about the American dream that one of your family members might have had when they moved here.
Grandpa was in World War II, and so I think his American dream, and maybe why he moved here after the war was because he experienced so much, violence and hardships during the war. I would assume that he came here to build a family and to enjoy the freedoms of America, to just build like a simple life, which is what he did. So he married my grandma. There is actually an interesting story there because she, I think she was going to be like deported or something, and he married her to keep her in the States. And so it was almost like a green card marriage, but they loved each other too. But I think maybe they got married earlier than they probably would have planned. And so that's an interesting story I need to learn more about. But I think them together building that life and getting to have my dad and live just a happy, quaint life. I think that was their American dream. And my grandpa, he lived till 90, and he was like playing bingo and dancing all the way up till his death. And so I know he just wanted to enjoy the simple pleasures of life.
So what do you think about American dream?
I think I'm living it. I grew up, I played sports, I went to school, and then I went to college and I graduated, and now I'm married and I have a job, and I think that it can be so simple, that the American dream is just enjoying the freedoms of America, and getting to travel and getting to just lead a happy life. I think that in my mind, I think that is the American dream.
So it still exists.
I would think so.
Okay, some immigrants that I have had on this podcast already, they had a specific one, like I want to buy a hotel, or I want to become rich, or I want to, be free in my religious views, or something like that, something more specific. But it sounds like most Americans so far said that they've either reached it or they're living it already.
Yeah, well, and I think I'm like very much simplifying, like just being happy.
I actually like that
dream. But I also think it's because I am like a third generation immigrant. So I like all I've known is this kind of way of living personally. And so, like I said, I think somebody who maybe moved here and experienced a different way of life and then came here and now is like seeing the freedoms that they didn't have, I definitely understand.
So they don't live it necessarily yet.
Right.
They're trying to reach it.
Yes.
So that their kids will live it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so maybe I'm reaping the benefits of my my grandparents immigrating over and setting up this American dream for me.
So finally, Paige, finish this sentence for me. People should be treated equally because
everyone matters.
Yes. I love that. I love it. Simple and short.
Yes.
And I agree with that. Well, thank you so much, Paige, for visiting me today. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram at podcasttad.